The contact request came in at 0312 ship time, which told me everything about how much the Reth Dominion respected us. Nobody wakes a Tier 6 at a civilized hour. I was in the cargo manifest bay when the alert chirped. Warrant Officer Devan Res. Logistics and load compliance. The least consequential person aboard the diplomatic runner, Cordial Passage. My job was to make sure the cultural exchange containers were correctly labeled, so the Reth inspectors didn't have grounds to impound anything. Paperwork. That was my contribution to humanity's diplomatic outreach. I pulled on my jacket and headed for the observation alcove off the main corridor, where a porthole gave me a clean line of sight to the inspection frigate sitting off our starboard bow. The Reth vessel was beautiful in the way a filing cabinet is beautiful, perfectly suited to its function, utterly indifferent to anything outside it. Smooth organic curves, bioluminescent running lines pulsing in their standard amber, roughly 4 times our length. Tier 1 aesthetics, my briefing notes had called them. The Dominion had been sorting the galaxy into tiers for 600 years. You were assigned your tier at first contact, based on the class of vessel you arrived in. Tonnage, armament, drive signature. They ran the numbers and stamped you, and the stamp was forever. We'd made first contact with the Reth Dominion 11 years ago. The vessel we'd sent was the survey runner Haversham, 42 meters, civilian science fit, 0 weapons, there to take atmospheric readings of a border world. The Dominion had logged it dutifully, Tier 6. Courier class, non-military, non-threatening, barely worth the scan. They weren't wrong about the Haversham. They opened the channel at 0317. The inspector cased officer who appeared on our screen had the Reth's characteristic stillness. 6-limbed, robed in ranked color, face. Arranged in the configuration their briefings called polite administrative patience, which looked to human eyes like someone who had been told they were about to be handed a parking citation and had made their peace with it. He addressed our captain, Sarah Vole, in the flat trade band that the Dominion used for Tier 6 interactions. Not the diplomatic register, the administrative one. The one you used for cargo manifests and entry permits. Couriers vessel Cordial Passage, he said. You are at the Reth Dominion border threshold. State cargo classification and intended transit duration. Tier 6 vessels are reminded that escort is not permitted in Dominion-adjacent space without prior tier licensing. Captain Vole acknowledged, gave him the cargo classification, gave him the transit duration, thanked him. Her voice was perfectly level. She had been doing this for 16 years. I watched from the alcove. The Reth inspector reviewed something off-screen. The manifest we'd transmitted, I assumed. The amber running lights on his frigate pulsed slow and steady, routine. They did perhaps 40 of these a day. Tier 6 courier with cultural exchange containers was so far beneath military consideration that his attention was probably already half on his next task. Classification confirmed, he said. Prepare for compliance verification. Hold position. Captain Vole said, understood. Then she reached to the secondary console, a small, unhurried motion, and pressed the contact signal. It was a tight beam, pre-arranged. I knew it was coming. I'd been briefed. I still wasn't ready for it. The Sable Meridian came out of stealth off our port bow. She was a heavy carrier, human Federal Navy designation, hull number FC7, commissioned 4 years prior. 460 meters of armored plate, flight deck, gun arrays, point defense clusters, and the 12 fighter craft she carried in her belly like a closed fist. She had been sitting in stealth for 6 hours, holding position 2 kilometers. Cordial Passage's port quarter, waiting. With her came 4 escorts, 2 destroyers and 2 fast frigates, materializing from nothing, running lights coming up in sequence, drive signatures blooming across every spectrum like the first notes of something very loud. 5 ships. The Reth inspection frigate's bioluminescent lines did something I had never seen bioluminescence do. They stuttered. The inspector's voice disappeared mid-syllable. Not cut off, stopped. The channel stayed open. I could see him on our screen. He was looking at something I couldn't see, something his sensor returns were telling him, and his face had moved out of polite administrative patience into an expression I could not find in any Reth briefing document I had ever read. Captain Vole waited. She was good at waiting. The inspector looked back at the screen. When he spoke, he was in a different register. not administrative band. I didn't recognize it immediately, and then I did. It was the diplomatic register, the one the Dominion used for Tier 1 interactions. Cordial passage, he said. The vessels on your port bearing, they are your escort? They are, Captain Vole said. Silence, not a short silence. That formation, he said. The lead vessel at classification, heavy carrier, she said. Standard fleet escort for diplomatic transit. We can provide full technical specifications if your records require updating. I don't know if Captain Vole had rehearsed that line, or if it came naturally. Either way, it was the most perfectly weighted sentence I ever heard a human being speak. If your records require updating. 11 years of Tier 6, 52 meters, 0 armament. One survey runner mapping cloud cover on a border moon, while 600 years of filing cabinet certainty decided we were. The inspector said nothing for a long moment. I watched his face. The Reth are not a demonstrative species. They process. They calculate. What I was seeing, the slight shift in how he held himself, the way his secondary limbs had gone very still. That was what recalculation looked like on a being who had spent his entire career knowing exactly. Everything stood. He closed the channel. No declaration, no formal acknowledgement. The amber lights on his frigate shifted from border inspection pulse to transit clear, and the cordial passage navigation board showed the crossing corridor open. The Reth frigate began a slow turn back toward Dominion space. We crossed the border at 0341. I stood at the porthole and watched the Sable Meridian hold her position until we were through, then ease into escort formation behind us. Unhurried, massive, patient. The fighter craft stayed aboard. The gun arrays stayed cold. Nobody had needed to do anything except exist. I have been asked since what first contact with the Reth Dominion felt like from inside the room. People expect something dramatic. A standoff, a hard word, a moment where the species that stamped us, Tier 6, had to say out loud what they'd gotten wrong. It wasn't like that. It was a man who sorted things for a living, running the numbers one more time, and arriving at a figure his forms didn't have a box for. The channel closed. The corridor opened. We never were Tier 6. We were just the only thing they'd seen.